I want you to imagine something for a second. When I say the word beautiful, what immediately pops into your head?
Well, if you are like most people listening right now, you are probably picturing youth. You picture clear skin, physical strength, boundless energy.
Right, exactly. It is a deeply ingrained, entirely physical definition.
Uh,
But today, well, we're going to completely dismantle that. We are redefining beauty. We are redefining wealth. And honestly, we are redefining what it actually means to live a successful life.
because, I mean, if you look at how modern society operates, the traditional view of aging is framed almost entirely as a narrative of decline.
Oh, completely.
We are taught to think of getting older as this process of losing things, losing that physical beauty, losing relevance, losing our grip on the world. It is a profoundly pessimistic cultural baseline.
And the text we are diving into today flips that baseline entirely on its head. We are pulling apart chapter 20, which is titled The Elders, from the book Thus Spoke Confucius by the thinker and writer Abdul Jabbar Al-Waily.
Right, which is a fascinating read.
It really is. And the mission for this deep dive is to extract a brilliant, actionable blueprint from his work. A blueprint that treats aging not as some inevitable tragedy, but as the absolute peak of human elegance, wisdom, and power. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Al-Waily essentially sets up the premise that aging is an exchange of currencies. Like, you are trading physical impulsivity for this magic key of wisdom.
That is a highly effective way to frame it, and it is crucial to establish right at the start that while the chapter is titled The Elders, this text is not just a survival guide for people already in their 70s or 80s.
Right, it is for everyone.
Exactly. It is a manual for how you, the listener, at any age can avoid the traps of bitterness, stagnation, and what the author terrifyingly calls the killer void of an empty mind.
The killer void, that is such a heavy phrase.
It is, but it is about setting up the architectural foundation of your life today, so that when you do age, you step into a position of power.
So let's start with that redefinition of beauty, because Al-Waily goes right for the throat on this concept.
Yeah.
He argues that the beauty of youth is purely physical,
Yeah.
and it is actually severely compromised by what he calls emotional impulsivity and just a total lack of experience. But the beauty of the elder, he calls that a moral beauty.
Right. Which is constructed entirely of wisdom and dignity. He makes a very sharp, almost ruthless observation here. He introduces the concept of being doubly ugly.
Oh, wow. Doubly ugly. That is harsh.
It is harsh, but he explains it well. According to Al-Waily, an elder who has not accumulated wisdom is doubly ugly because they have naturally lost the physical beauty of youth, but they completely failed to gain the moral beauty of age to replace it.
So they are just left with nothing.
Basically, yeah. Conversely, he notes that a young person who somehow possesses the wisdom of an elder is an incredibly rare, ideal combination. But realistically, true wisdom requires the raw material of time and hard-won experience.
I have to pause you there because here is the part of the text that really threw me off and made me reread the entire page.
Oh, the definition of wisdom.
Yes, because when we think of wisdom, we usually imagine this mystical, floating state of enlightenment, someone meditating on a mountain.
Right.
But Al-Waily defines wisdom as an accurate calculation of the profit and loss list.
Right.
I'm going to push back on this. Is being wise really just being cold and calculating? Because that sounds less like a wise elder and more like, I don't know, a ruthless emotional accountant.
What's fascinating here is that Al-Waily actually anticipates that exact reaction. It is a really common misconception to view his philosophy as a call for deprivation or the killing of human emotion.
So he isn't telling us to be robots.
Not at all. He
No.
is telling you to be a better investor. Wisdom is not the suppression of joy. It is the refusal to trade a massive long-term compounding joy for a tiny, fleeting, short-term impulse.
But how does that actually play out in real life? Because, in the moment, an impulse just feels like an emotion you desperately need to express.
Think about it like a financial portfolio, but for your emotional energy. If emotion is genuinely beneficial, wisdom does not suppress it.
Okay.
But wisdom is the unique cognitive ability to endure a small, temporary deprivation. So say, biting your tongue when you want to scream at someone who annoyed you.
Right, which is incredibly hard to do.
Exactly. But you do it to secure a much larger good in the future, which is maintaining a valuable relationship and your own peace of mind.
Ah, I see.
He describes this specific kind of emotional calculation as a guiding light that pierces the darkness of ignorance. and he calls it a magic key that solves intractable problems. It values your future self over your immediate, volatile impulses.
So if wisdom is this emotional calculation, this ledger of profit and loss,
Yeah.
then Al-Waily makes it explicitly clear what the absolute worst investment you can possibly make is.
Oh, absolutely.
Holding onto a grudge.
The absolute worst. It is the equivalent of setting your emotional bank account on fire.
Right.
He points out that the most beloved elders, the ones people naturally gravitate toward and actually want to be around, they're the most tolerant. Tolerance is the ultimate sign of a fully matured mind.
And he references the Quranic principle here, right?
Yes, the profound idea of repelling evil with good.
And he paints such a visceral picture of the alternative. He says holding grudges puts a person in the hell of hatred. And he does not mean some abstract philosophical afterlife concept.
No, he means right now.
Exactly. He means a literal, daily, suffocating misery experienced in this world, in your living room, right now. Hatred literally ruins the hater's life long before it ever touches the person they are mad at.
It is so true.
If you are listening to this right now and thinking about a grudge you're harboring at work or in your family, Al-Waily is essentially telling you that you are drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
It breeds a vicious, self-sustaining cycle. The hatred makes you physically tense and emotionally unpleasant to be around.
Which pushes people away.
Right. That makes people avoid you, which makes you feel isolated and more resentful, which just deepens the hatred. You trap yourself in a prison of your own design.
It is terrifying.
But, and this is perhaps the most crucial caveat in the entire chapter, Al-Waily is absolutely not advocating for being a doormat.
I am so glad you brought up the boundaries, because it is really easy to be tolerant and assume you just have to let people walk all over you in the name of peace.
Oh yeah, tolerance has incredibly strict boundaries in his framework. It does not mean accepting unjust insults.
Okay.
It does not mean letting those under your care act corruptly or destructively. He states explicitly that allowing someone to ruin their future or harm the community because you want to maintain the appearance of being tolerant is not wisdom.
What is it then?
It is negligence. It is a complete failure of responsibility.
But how do you actually measure that in the moment? I mean, it is easy on paper to say set boundaries, but if a family member is acting out, isn't the natural human instinct to just let it slide to avoid a screaming match?
Yeah, that's the natural instinct.
So how does an elder or anyone know when they're being tolerant versus just being negligent?
This raises an important question about mechanics. The text calls for a very specific operational mechanism, which is gradual firmness.
Gradual firmness.
Yes, when discipline or firmness is required, you apply it incrementally. And most importantly, you never let anger pull you out of your natural state of calm.
That sounds difficult.
It takes practice. Imagine your baseline personality is a shock absorber on a car. It takes the bumps and the friction out of daily interactions so the ride is smooth.
Okay, I like that analogy.
But firmness is the steering wheel. You still need to turn the wheel to avoid crashing into a wall. When you have to steer away from disaster, you don't rip the wheel off in a rage.
Right, you just steer smoothly.
You turn it deliberately, and the moment the necessary discipline is applied, you must immediately let go of the tension and return to your baseline shock-absorbing tolerance.
So firmness is a tool you pick up, use, and then put back.
Exactly. It is not a state you live in.
Okay, so you've balanced your emotional ledger. You aren't holding grudges. You're using firmness only as a tool. You're mentally healthy. But Al-Waily points out a massive physical trapdoor waiting for you.
Oh, the physical stagnation.
Yeah. If your body is stagnating in a recliner all day, your brain will actually force you right back into emotional chaos. We're moving from the emotional ledger to the literal physics of aging.
Yes, and this is where he introduces the concept of the killer void.
The killer void again.
Right. Retirement and old age, or really any period of prolonged inactivity, can easily become this killer void if there is no physical movement.
So you have to keep moving.
He considers physical movement, walking, visiting friends, deliberately avoiding over-reliance on cars for short errands to be absolutely mandatory for survival.
He gets surprisingly physiological with it, too. Like, he details how movement improves blood circulation, how it prevents the buildup of fats and the hardening of arteries.
He's very observant.
But I want to focus on the psychological fallout of not moving, because it is so hyper-specific and so relatable. He says movement and work distract the elder from obsessive thoughts, imagined illnesses, and crucially, family squabbles.
Connecting a sedentary lifestyle directly to family drama is a stroke of absolute
It
brilliance.
is brilliant. I was reading this thinking about how true it is. He draws a direct, causal line between sitting on the couch for too long and suddenly starting a ridiculous argument with your spouse about how the dishwasher is loaded.
Yes,
It
exactly.
is like a shark. If a shark stops swimming, it sinks. If a human brain stops moving and processing new environments, it just starts biting the people closest to it.
That is a perfect way to put it.
You just start picking fights because your brain desperately needs a problem to solve. If you find yourself constantly annoyed by minor things your family does, Al-Waily is telling you to literally go for a walk.
That is exactly the mechanism he is describing. The human mind is a pattern recognition machine built to solve problems. If you do not give it external, productive problems to solve through physical activity and interaction with the outside world, an idle mind will simply invent problems internally.
And usually those problems are about the people in the same room as you.
Exactly. They involve hyperanalyzing the people in your immediate vicinity. Therefore, finding suitable physical work or maintaining a routine of movement isn't just about keeping your joints lubricated.
It is for your sanity.
It is a fundamental, non-negotiable necessity for mental peace and family harmony.
But let's be realistic. Physical motion isn't enough on its own. I mean, you cannot just walk around the neighborhood for 14 hours a day to avoid arguing with your kids.
No, you'd exhaust yourself.
The brain needs a treadmill too. So how does Al-Waily suggest we fill this killer void intellectually?
He champions reading and writing as the supreme hobbies.
Reading and writing.
Yes, they are not framed merely as pleasant pastimes to kill an afternoon. They provide deep culture, profound enjoyment, and they allow you to leave a lasting, tangible legacy.
And he brings in a great quote here.
He does. He quotes the thinker Abbas Mahmoud al-Aqad here, who said, "Whoever reads history adds lives to his life."
Whoever reads history adds lives to his life. That is a stunning way to look at it. You are not just trapped in your one linear 80-year timeline.
No, you get to live thousands of years.
When you read, you are absorbing the brutal mistakes, the massive victories, and the complex experiences of countless other human beings.
And Al-Waily actually lays out a very literal daily schedule for well-being based on this exact idea.
A literal schedule.
Yes, he advocates for a highly structured day, which combats the killer void by removing the anxiety of empty time.
What does the schedule look like?
He suggests dedicating specific blocks. Time for reading, time for writing or recording thoughts, time for socializing, time for resting, and specifically, at least a half hour of daily physical exercise.
Wow, so it is a comprehensive, holistic regimen for maintaining total human functioning. Here's where it gets really interesting for me, and I need you to break this down. Why intellectual work specifically? Why reading history and writing? I mean, why couldn't someone just take up golf or gardening or restoring vintage cars to fill the void?
Because intellectual work provides the ultimate cure for pessimism.
The cure for pessimism.
Yes, and pessimism, in Al-Waily's view, is a disease of perspective. He defines pessimism as an obsession with what you lack.
Okay, that makes sense.
It is a hyper-focus on the physical strength you don't have anymore, the friends you've lost, or the minor things going wrong in your immediate environment. Intellectual work, specifically reading history or literature, violently shifts your focus.
I'm tracking with you, but how does reading a book about, say, ancient Rome cure my anxiety about my knees aching today?
Let's use an analogy. Imagine you have a tiny scratch on the screen of your smartphone.
Okay, super annoying.
Right. But if you look at that scratch through a high-powered microscope, it looks like a massive, jagged canyon. It looks catastrophic.
Yeah, it would look huge.
That is what pessimism does to your minor problems. Reading history takes the microscope away so you can see the whole phone, the room you are in, and the world outside the window.
Oh, wow. I love that.
Intellectual work makes a person deeply logical. It forces your mind to weigh what it actually has against what it supposedly lacks.
So it puts things in perspective.
Completely. A logical mind, nourished by the vast, sweeping scope of human history, wars, plagues, empires rising and falling, realizes that obsessing over a minor missing thing in one's own comfortable life is fundamentally foolish. It gives your problems proportion.
Proportion is the enemy of pessimism.
Precisely. When you understand the sheer scale of human experience, it naturally breeds optimism about your own position.
And that mental optimism, that release of chronic stress, in turn, tangibly improves your physical health.
It is all connected.
That completely reframes the purpose of reading for me.
Yeah.
Now, as we move into the final pillar of his philosophy, We have to shift from this internal world, managing your emotional ledger, keeping your body moving, reading to gain proportion, to the external reality.
The societal role.
Right. How does the wise elder actually interact with society? What is their function in the community? And a massive part of this is his stance on absolutes.
Yes, the wise elder rigidly avoids absolute extremes. Al-Waily points out that in worldly human matters, there is rarely absolute 100% truth or absolute 100% falsehood.
Right. Very few things are that simple.
Because the elder has absorbed so much history and lived through so much complexity, they know this in their bones. Therefore, they never oppose something entirely, nor do they support something blindly.
They measure their reactions.
Exactly. They live in the nuance.
They don't deal in binary code. They aren't constantly screaming zeros and ones like the rest of the internet. They see the vast gray area.
And because they see the gray area, they become what Al-Waily beautifully calls the safe harbor of the house.
A safe harbor.
Yes. They are the person the oppressed seek refuge with. They are the person who can mediate and actually solve disputes, because every single person in the family knows this elder is not blinded by extreme bias or tribalism.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, to truly be that safe harbor, you need much more than just a calm demeanor and a good attitude.
So much more.
And this is where the text gets brilliantly, almost shockingly practical. Al-Waily insists on the absolute necessity of financial dignity.
Yes, the financial aspect is huge.
He urges elders, and really anyone preparing for old age, to meticulously save money and maintain strict financial independence.
I was so glad he included this.
I was surprised by this section. It is incredibly pragmatic. We spend so much time talking about lofty, abstract philosophy and moral beauty, and suddenly he is giving literal, grounded advice.
Save your cash.
Exactly. Save your cash, so you aren't humiliated by having to beg your kids for help during sickness or hardship. Be fiercely reasonable with your resources, so you do not become a burden on the very people you are supposed to be guiding.
And we really need to emphasize why this matters so much. Why does financial dependence strip away moral authority?
How does it?
Well, think about the psychological dynamic of trying to dispense profound life advice or trying to act as an impartial mediator in a family dispute when one of the people in that dispute is actively paying your rent or buying your groceries.
Oh, wow. Yeah, your authority is totally compromised.
You cannot be a beacon of light, a fierce protector, or a true safe harbor for your family if you are fundamentally entirely dependent on them due to your own lack of financial discipline earlier in life.
Financial dignity preserves your moral authority.
That is the core of it.
It is impossible to dispense objective wisdom when you are terrified of upsetting the person handing you your allowance. It proves you did not calculate your own profit and loss ledger properly when you had the chance.
Right, it undermines the whole philosophy.
And this intense pragmatism ties right into his final major point, which is essentially a system of natural justice or karma.
Right. He argues that caring for one's own elders is the ultimate guarantee that one's children will care for them in the future.
That's like a cycle.
It is a natural justice system built seamlessly into human behavioral psychology. Your children are constantly watching how you treat your parents.
They see everything.
They do. They are observing whether you are tolerant, whether you show respect, whether you protect their dignity, and they internalize whatever you do as the absolute standard for how they will eventually treat you when you are the elder.
It is the ultimate long-term investment. If we go all the way back to that ledger of profit and loss we started with, treating the elders in your life with profound respect and care isn't just the morally right thing to do.
It is the smartest calculation you can make.
Exactly. It is the smartest emotional and practical calculation you can possibly make to secure your own future dignity.
It all connects beautifully. Wisdom is not an accident of aging.
It takes work.
It is the deliberate result of taking the raw, chaotic material of experience, filtering it through a logical, historically informed mind, maintaining physical and intellectual momentum to stave off the void, and consistently choosing the long-term good over the destructive short-term impulse.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Let's summarize this blueprint we've extracted from Abdul Jabbar Al-Waily.
Let's do a recap.
To redefine your own aging process, starting today, you have to treat wisdom as a ledger, relentlessly investing in long-term joy. You must use tolerance as your daily baseline, keeping firmness in the toolbox to be used only when steering away from danger.
Right?
You must stay physically moving, literally to keep your brain from inventing family drama. You must read history to strip away the microscope of pessimism and add countless lives to your own.
And the practical side.
Yes, and finally, you avoid absolute extremes and fiercely protect your financial dignity so you can truly earn the right to be that safe harbor for others.
It is a rigorous, demanding blueprint. It requires constant active management.
But the reward is huge.
The reward is a stage of life characterized by immense respect, unbreakable inner peace, and genuine, quiet power.
True beauty isn't the fleeting, unearned physical symmetry of youth. True beauty is the hard-won, carefully calculated moral elegance of a person who has mastered the art of living.
It really is.
But as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. You don't have to wait until retirement to become this safe harbor. What if you applied the elder's profit and loss emotional calculation to a conflict you're having right now?
That is a great challenge.
And what if you read a piece of history today to add another lifetime to yours? Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep building that ledger.